So just as a review, when you go to the web, if you're sitting here, this is your PC, and you type in, you bring up a web browser, and you type into the top of it, www.facebook.com, and hit enter. What happens is, you send a message out to the internet, so this cloud will be the internet, and there's actually a table that says www.facebook.com actually equals, there's a machine with a number assigned to it, and you're actually looking for that machine. So I think I gave the example, it's kind of like in your cell phone when you go calling a friend and you go to call your friend Mary, you don't actually dial Mary, you don't dial M-A-R-Y. You look up Mary and then next to that is a phone number and you dial that number. So it's the same idea. So you're sending a message out to California, where Facebook has its servers, and you're saying to them, I would like an HTML file to come back to me. So they send, and you're also in your message, you're giving your machine's number. Every machine, just like every phone number, has a unique number. You're sending in your message your machine's number. So they're going to send an HTML file back to your machine's number through the internet, and then it will be displayed on your machine. So if you bring up a browser, I'll bring up this browser. So I'm bringing up a web browser. Now I'm saying go to www.facebook. And I hit enter. And they sent back to us not what we're seeing, but if you actually go to, after a web page is being displayed on your computer, if you go to view and source, you can see actually what was sent back to us. And this is pretty involved. This is an HTML file. Pretty long, pretty involved file. But what this basically is doing is it's giving a description of how to present this picture. So this picture you're seeing is your web browser following the instructions of that HTML file that came back. So the instructions are going to say, like, from this point to this point, paint the screen blue. And then at this point, say, display the word email. And then have a box opened up that a person can type into the box, and then password and another box here, and then a button that if you hit this button, information will be sent back to the server. So really, and then this is a picture over here, so we have to say at this location in the web page, display this picture. So it's really a set of instructions telling the browser how to make this picture look like this. So what we'll do is, since this is a little more involved, this Facebook one, for example, this code, this is HTML code. Since this is a little involved, we'll go and we will look at simpler examples. So, an example of an HTML page. So what I'm going to do is I made some examples, but I'll click on them and then I'll do the view source. So, this is a much simpler version of the web page. But this file right here, this file from here to here, is a description of how to make a web page look like this. So all HTML files are tag-based, meaning there's a tag at the beginning. This says I am starting an HTML page. And this tag at the bottom where we say where we have this less than with a slash, this means the end of the HTML page. So this is the start, this is the begin, this is the end. Then within there we can have subsections. So the body of the page is probably the biggest subsection. Here's the start of the body, and here's the end of the body. Okay? Then, now this is just stuff you kind of learn over time, just getting used to it, but we can have text, and this could be a heading, so a less than with an H1 and a greater than means this is the beginning of a heading level 1, so that's like the biggest print. We can make heading 2, heading 3 if we want, and this print will get smaller and smaller. Then we can type any text we want. my first web page, and then we say less than slash, that means the end of heading 1, and we close it out. Now anything after that is no longer considered heading 1. Then P ends up being a paragraph. So you don't worry about whether you memorize this stuff or not. It all starts to make sense. It all starts to just become second nature to you. And actually we'll talk later on about using tools that generate this page. So you won't even have to know this stuff. But it's still good to know, because once in a while we're going to put something in our web page that the tool doesn't know how to do, and we'll have to manually go into the HTML and type it in. So it's still good to know. But 95% of what you're going to want to do, a tool will do this for you. But if you created a file and manually typed this, less than HTML greater than, new line, that's, typed in the whole thing, and hit save, and then display this in a web browser, a web browser knows what these things mean. The web browser understands what these tags mean. So this page is basically saying, print my first heading in big letters, H1, and then print my first paragraph in normal paragraph font, which is this. And we can change the font and the size if we want later. So now if we want to add to this web page, we could go like this. So I'll go back. Example 2, I'm going to add a title. Okay, so let me first go back to example 1. A title is another tag. So like I say, HTML is a tag-based language. Right now, if you go to this web page, we never gave this a name, so it's just telling us the path of where the file is. But if we wanted to have a name for our web page, we can add a title to it. So that's our current version. Now I want to go and get a slight improvement over it. I want to say view source. So let me compare the two sources now. The only thing new that was added is this. So what's the new part? I added a new tag. I had the less than, title, greater than. This is the beginning of a title. This is the end of a title. And in the middle I said my page title. What does that do? If somebody brings up this page, then on the tab, it'll be whatever you typed here. So that way if you have 45 pages up, you don't want to have, sometimes you'll see untitled page, and sometimes you'll just see some long tab. But it's kind of nice to have your page have a title, that way if somebody's poking around looking for your page again, the title will be there. So that's the title tag. And like I say, most of every component you could add to a web page has a tag to it. So now, let's see, we can change the background color of our page. So right now, this page as we're looking at is pretty boring, it's got a white background. But this page is, well, the projector makes it look kind of green. But, let's see, view source, so what's the new thing that's been added? I've now added I've actually updated an existing tag. So, although the camera makes it look kind of green, it looks yellow on my PC. But basically what I did was I took, this was the older version where the page came out white. And on the body I added style equals background dash color colon yellow. Now you don't have to, you'd be going nuts if you were trying to memorize all this stuff, how to do that. But if you, for some reason, wanted to write HTML code directly, and you said to yourself, I know I can change the background color, you could just go on Google and say, type in HTML background color, hit enter, and someone will give you an example, and then you cut and paste and change it to the color you like. You'd never want to memorize this stuff. But yeah, if you were memorizing, it would have to be style equals, quote, background hyphen color, colon, the color you want, quote. You have to remember that. So, what changed from this version to this version was I made the background color yellow, and unfortunately the projector makes it look green. But it looks yellow on my PC over here. Okay, so let me get rid of this one. And now this will be considered the old one, and I'll make a new change. So now I'm calling these pages release 2, that was release 2.1, now we're going to do release 2.2. I'll change the paragraph font and text. So now if I say view the source, here, bring that source back. This one here. That should be good. Okay, so now I have the tags. The tag saying it's yellow is still there. But what have I done new? I've taken my paragraph and I've added in a new line right after paragraph. So it's like I hit enter and then I typed font size is 3. I changed the font size. I've changed the type and I've changed the color to blue. That's the color of the text. So I don't know if this is going to get picked up, but this text is now blue. It used to be black. The default is black. And I changed the font size and made it a little bit bigger for the normal paragraphs that are on the page. And then I typed in instructions that said to view the HTML code, hit the source button, the view and the source button. Okay, so really what we're doing is we're just manually, each time we're adding a new line or two and it's making some kind of a change to our program. Change to our website. So we'll get rid of this example. And I'll move this one over. And then the next release of our product, we have an unordered list. So let's say view source. And now what I've done is, I'm going to change from the last version to this version. I left in the font change. And the new thing that changed is, basically what I did was I took this sentence, the sentence that said, if you want to view the HTML code, go to, click on view, and then click on source in your browser. And I made it like a step-by-step bullet. So this tag means, and a UL is an unordered list. You could have a list, and then if you want them, you could put it, make them always come out in alphabetical order, but we'll just, maybe we want to have a list that we don't want the browser sorted. We want to say view, click on view first, and then click on source. We don't want to have it flip it for alphabetical order reasons, and everyone gets confused. So we intentionally want an unordered list. We could have an ordered list if we want. So here's the start of the unordered list. Here's the end of the unordered list. So we just keep putting things inside of other things, right? Little blocks in our HTML page. And then this is the way the web browser will display it. And then LI stands for a list item. So each LI will end up, the browser knows, when it sees an LI, the browser knows to put like one of these dots here and build a list for you. Then if we wanted to later, we could say for lists, I don't like dots, maybe I want dashes. But by default, it's a dot. So what we could do is we could say, we could add something that says don't use dots, use dashes. So all we end up keep doing is just, we have a set of instructions, and this looks somewhat like English, but it's, it's not really English. You have to just kind of learn what these tags do. And then we can type in text. And then if we send this as input into a web browser, the web browser knows how to follow these instructions and display it to look like this. Okay, so this is an example where we've added an unordered list to our web page. And then, let's see, we'll get rid of this one, out with the old. And in our next release, we're going to add a form. So the new, well, you know what? The only thing that changed, the only reason I'm showing the old one, I just want to show what new thing has been added. But what's new that's being added, the last version had this sentence, the unordered list, so that's still here. And we have our 2 bullet items. Now we've added a new thing called a form. So the form starts here, and the form ends here. The slash form means the ending. So always the slash with the same thing means the ending. So this is the new chunk of code that's been added. And again, this is just HTML stuff that you need to know, but what we want to do is we want to be able to say to somebody, you know, enter your first name, enter your last name, male, female, and hit the submit button. So a form in HTML is a way for, on your web page, for you to ask questions to the person who's using your web page. And when they hit submit, how those answers get sent back to the server, that'll come a little bit later on. But right now, what we're doing is we're saying, we're displaying the text first name, semicolon, which you see here, first name, semicolon. And then we're describing this box. And this box is an input box. Somebody's going to put input into it. They're going to put in text. And we have to give it a name. The reason why we have to give it a name is a little further down the road. When they hit submit, we might want to take their first name and their last name and record that in our database, so when they log in later on, we'll have it. So we have to pass it under a variable. So that's what this ends up being. But for now, you don't have to worry about what that means. But it'll become necessary later on. In forms, there are many different ways you can ask somebody a question. You could give them a box and have them type in an answer. You could give them, you've probably seen where they click on like an arrow and a bunch of choices come down, like what state do you live in, New York, New Jersey, you know. So it's a fixed set of choices. You can have what they call a radio button. A radio button is where you give somebody a bunch of choices, and as long as you keep using the same variable name, they will only be allowed to pick one of the choices. So that's what a radio button is, as opposed to a checklist. So for example, if I wanted to use this page, and I want to give an answer, so I can type in Bill. So I can type in any text I want into these boxes, but now if I go to check if I try to check both of these, it won't let me check both of them. So what that means, and sometimes you want to let people check both of them, and sometimes you don't. Like if you ask somebody, what kind of food do you like? Maybe they like different kinds of food, right? Italian, Chinese, whatever. They might check many of them. But some questions are the type of questions where only one answer should make sense. So we would make that a radio, the type of the input would be a radio. And then as long as these two match, like we could have made more choices, more genders if we wanted, and as long as these two names match, the web page will only accept one answer. If you go to give another answer, it'll cancel the old answer. But if we made this instead of radio, if we made it a checkbox, then it will accept multiple answers. So it really depends on what you, the web page designer, wants to type into these boxes, or wants the person to enter. You could decide what type of input you want to take. And there's other types, like you could do a file upload. So if somebody wants to upload a picture to your website, they would have, it would be something like a file name, and then there'd be a button here that would say browse, so they could click on that and then look for something on that PC, and then they could upload it to you. So what forms are in HTML, like I say, this is what's being new. This is what's new for this web page, from here to here. We can ask people questions on our web page and give them some way to answer the question. And depending on what answers we consider acceptable and not acceptable, we determine what they should do. Should they be typing into text fields? Should they be clicking on buttons? And then eventually we give them a submit button that they can send their data to us. So right now this page doesn't do anything when you hit the submit button. So that'll come a little bit later on, how to handle the submit button. Okay. So another thing that we can add is a table to a web page. Let's see, this is the older version, and this is the So what's new that's been added here is this section. Here's the table, here's where the table begins, so I put it right after the form we just went over in the last example. Now we're going to add a table, which is right here. So the table is, what we've decided to do is we've decided to add a table. So there's less than and then the word table. We're allowed to add attributes to it, and this eventually closes. So this would be the beginning of our table, and then slash table would be the end of our table. And what we can do is we can have rows and cells. So these are rows, and then TDs are things that go into each cell in a row. And then at the end of the TR means that's the end of that row. Now go to the next row and start filling in more data. Now, if you think about it, we could start combining some of the concepts we've learned. For example, you could make a table that has, and each table, instead of it being words, I just put words in here, row 1, cell 1. But we could put anything in here, pictures. We could put forms in the boxes of the table. So all of these things we're starting to learn, we could all put these inside of each other. So instead of it being row 1, cell 1, we could put a form right in here. So a form could be inside a row of a cell of a table, or a picture could be inside the cell of a table, and so on. So we can add tables, and tables makes our data look a little bit more organized. Right now, all that's been happening is everything we type keeps showing up below the thing we typed last time. And it might be nice to put stuff like out here. So in that case, we'd want to start cutting up our web page into sections. We might want to put it a block here, and then a block here, and then we could start putting stuff into those blocks. So that's why we talk about tables. And then, let's see if I had something. I'll get rid of this guy. Put this one over here. And adding a picture. Okay, so let me just go over adding a picture. What I did to add this picture was, in the place where I'm keeping this web page is here. So what we're looking at, what we've been looking at the whole time is up here. And we talked about this Zorak server, which serves up pages out of, every student has their own individual web server at Monmouth University. Zorak monmouth.edu/ this is my login. Then I have a folder called IT250. Under that I have a folder called HTML. And under that I have first web page _ release 4.0. And that's what this page is. So where I'm keeping the HTML is in that folder. That's the folder where the HTML for this web page is. So if I go to that folder, I now want to display an image in my web page. So I need to go get a picture from somewhere. And I actually went out onto Google. Let me see if it's still there. I was looking for a picture of Monmouth University, and I went to, rather than go to Monmouth University, I went to Google and then I said Monmouth University logo. And yeah, this one came up. So this is actually a nice logo because it lets the background of your page seep through the picture. So it's not like the whole page is, it's not like the whole picture will be white. Whatever you made the background, it will come through, only the picture part will show. So that's kind of a good logo. So then I save this one. Now what I need to do is I want to make my web page display this picture. So I did a save as, and it gives you an opportunity to save it. Then I went and found the directory in the folder. I went to the folder where I'm keeping my web page. And I created a subfolder called images. This is not, you don't have to do this, but this is a common thing to do. That if your web page is going to have pictures on it, it's sometimes a good idea to just put all the pictures in one folder. That way, if you ever wanted to move the web page over to somewhere else, you could just copy all the pictures over, and then all your different HTML files keep saying, go to this images file and pull out this picture. So, the source code for adding a picture to a web page would look like this. Once, and like I say, you could, as long as the picture is anywhere that the web page can find it, you'll be able to display it. But it's just sometimes good to be a little organized. And let's see, the code is right here. So it's this line of code is the new piece. So this is the first example of something where I didn't add it to the bottom. So now I'm taking the stuff we did before and pushing it down. So what we're saying here in this line of code is at this location, right below the, well, let me slide this over. Right below the, right below where it says my first heading, right below where it says my first heading, which is right here, I inserted something new. I inserted this one line. And the line says, this is HTML, this is an image source tag. And actually, you can end an image source tag by just saying slash in small print. You might think it should say slash image source, but they seem to have gotten away with that over time. So anyway, so this is the start of it. It's an image source tag. Now, where is this image, this picture? Well, I decided, you don't have to do this, but I decided to put it in a folder called images in the same directory that this page is in. So when you start to refer to, when an HTML page goes to another file to grab stuff from, it assumes its location is wherever the HTML code currently is. So from here, I would go to my images folder, and then in there I have a folder called Mohammed_logo.gif. This is an optional thing to do, but you say alternate and you put a phrase here, because, and the reason why this is what if this picture is not found? What should be displayed here? And you ever see it, sometimes it'll just have that broken glass, like a picture's missing. Sometimes that doesn't look good, so it'd be nice if it had what was supposed to be there. So let me, I'll just show you what it'll look like if an HTML page went looking for a picture and the picture wasn't there. So the way I can make that happen is like this. I go to where this page is, HTML. I go to images and I change the name of this picture to call it Monolith Logo X. Now the page won't find it, right? Because, now let me just do the source. If I say, right now it's looking for a file under the images folder called monolithlogo.gif, not monolithlogox.gif. So if I reload this page, it won't find the picture. So now the picture's gone. But that phrase, the alt, what goes in the alt, is monolith logo. At least that kind of tells the person what's supposed to be there. Instead of, you know, so at least it's, I don't know, a little bit better. So that's really what the alt part is. So I can bring the picture back by renaming it correctly. And let's see where, if I rename this and get rid of the X, now it'll have the correct name, and we reload the page. So now the page is in there. So what's really happening here with this line, when you go out to a browser, have you ever noticed sometimes if you go out to a web page, the web page comes back and then a little bit later the picture starts showing up? Okay, so here's what's really happening. You went out to the web server, like let's say you went to Facebook.com. This HTML file comes back to you, not with the picture. Then your browser starts to say, oh, I know what HTML means, I know what title means, I know what body means, I know what the... And then it says, I know what image source means, and that means go back to the server and get a picture. And then the picture arrives a little bit later. So that's what, it's following the instructions on how to build a page, but this instruction says, go back to the server and start gathering up pictures. And that's why pictures show up a little bit later. So as your page is being displayed, it's also, there are instructions in the page that tell it how to go back out to the internet and get more stuff. So that's the stuff that always comes a little bit later. Okay. So yeah, so now we can have pictures in our web page, but the pictures usually, you have to go back out to the website to get them. Now sometimes if you go to a website multiple times in the same day, the picture comes up quicker. And the reason is a copy of the picture is now on your PC. So it doesn't have to go and get it again. So it's usually the first time for that browser session that you go out to that web page that there might be a little delay in getting the picture. Okay, and then another thing we can do is we can add a hyperlink. So the hyperlink goes like this. That's where, and if you use the internet, you do this all the time, but that's this line here I just added. So a hyperlink is basically where you have text, but actually it doesn't even have to be text, it could be a picture now. But you have text on your web page, and if you move the mouse onto that text and click on it, it will go somewhere else. Let me just move this over. So the new thing that I added was this line that says, and again, this is HTML tagged, and it's not quite English, and it's kind of hard to remember, but after a while you just get the hang of it. This is a href, this is a hyperlink reference. And what I'm saying is, I'm putting in the words Monmouth University. So that's showing up right here, Monmouth University. So I put it right after the picture. So I put in the text, actually I made a new paragraph, and then I said Monmouth University. But now I've decided to make these words, Monmouth University, a hyperlink, which means if somebody puts their mouse on here and clicks it, it will go to HTTP, that means go back out to the internet, / www.monmouth.edu. So what I've decided to do is make this particular word, unlike these words, a hyperlink. So what that means is if somebody goes to my web page and puts their mouse on monmouth.edu, you can actually see this is being generated by your HTML. You could see at the bottom of the screen, let me just move the camera down a little bit. You could see at the bottom of the screen, just when you put your mouse over the word, I haven't even clicked anything. See down here it says http://monmouth.edu. That lets you know if you do hit it, that's where you're going. So that's, I don't know, you could think of it as a warning. But then once we click on it, it goes to a brand new page, monmouth.edu. And your web browser, which went to our page first and then went to monmouth.edu second, it's stacking up these web pages. So if we go backwards, it'll go back to our original page, which I'm sure you've all done 1,000 times. So if we go backwards, we're back to this page. Okay. So as you can imagine, with HTML files, wow, I've stacked up a lot here. With HTML files, you can, of all the things you could think of that you've done on the internet, there's some way within HTML to do it. So any type of questions you've ever answered on a forum, stuff you've submitted, pictures you've seen cases where if you have one picture and then if you put your mouse over the picture but not click on it, it changes to a different picture. So that's another thing you could do. There's an HTML tag for that. So pretty much anything you could ever do, there's a corresponding HTML tag that can do it. So now you might think it must be really painful to write code using HTML, right? Because you have to remember all of these tags. You have to remember all of these tags. And it seems like, and it's an extremely error-prone language, because, let's say, for example, you wanted to create a form, and you happen to remember it's less than, form, greater than, then start typing in your form. What if you forgot the slash form, the thing at the end? Everything after it is assumed to be part of your form, because you never made the form stop. Or if you put 2 slashes in, then the web page won't know what that means, because it's only programmed to read slash with a form. So it could be a very error-prone language to this HTML, which is a language, so it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. That's what HTML stands for. So it's a language, kind of like English, but a little different. The web browser understands it. We as human beings somewhat understand it, but the web browser understands this language perfectly. And if you make the slightest mistake, stuff that shouldn't be in a form is now in a form, stuff that should, a table didn't quite end and everything else becomes part of the table. So, and we as human beings, we kind of know what we want the web page to look like. We want a heading and we want a picture and we kind of know what we want. So, wouldn't it be nice if there was some kind of a tool that we could just kind of, with the way our mind wants to design it, just type it all in and then say, like if we could type it in to look like this, and then say now generate the HTML, and then send that out to whoever wants to see our web page. So we could do something like that using Microsoft Word. I'll just do a real quick example of it, and if you want, you can help me design this web page. But if we go like this, here's what I'll do. I'll make a folder. We're going to put a really quick web page together, like in 2 minutes. I'll make a folder called Word. Okay, so we're going to work out of this folder. Now, if you remember, by default, if you direct a web browser to a folder, it's assumed that there is a file in there called index.html. So what we'll do is we'll create a Word document. So this is Microsoft Word. And we'll call the Word document index. We don't really have to do this, but it'll make it a little bit easier. So now I'm going to open up a Word document. So a Word document generally has nothing to do with HTML, right? A Word document is basically a document that can be used to like create a report or something like that. But Word has some nice features to it. For example, you can change the background color of a Word document by simply going page color. So you have a preference?
Not really. That's perfect.
Okay, green?
Perfect.
Okay. And we could use Word's clip art, right? We could say, no, not clip art. What's the one, this one, word art? What's the one where, okay, let's say that. So we can type text here, like welcome to my page. What does one where the words come out kind of wavy?
Yeah, I think that is it's not word art. Dropped, can't scroll.
Well, anyway.
Smarter?
Yeah, smart. Is that it, smarter? Okay.
Maybe not.
Well, basically anything you can do in Word. I just forget now how to do this, but.
Oh, it's up when you click on it. It comes up in the format to the top. Can you click on that format in the drawing tools? Top, all the way at the top.
This thing?
Yeah.
No. Okay, well, anyway, so, and then let's say here we wanted to insert a picture. Well, it's easy. We know how to do insert pictures. We say insert picture. And we can go to, I wish it was loaded where we were before. So let's see. picture and then type, you know. So I mean, you kind of get the idea, right? That we can basically do anything you can do in Word, set the background color. And it's not like we didn't have to remember that to change the background color, you had to say, do you even remember what it was? I forget now. Background hyphen color colon green.
Sounds good.
Whatever, you know, we would have had to done something like that.
Quotes.
In HTML, we'd have to do that, but in Word, we just say page layout, background color, pick a color, we're done.
Right.
Right? And then if you want a heading with some kind of like this kind of print that, you know, we don't normally have in HTML, but there is going to be some corresponding way to do that, we could actually do that. So then we could say, we could center it. In other words, we're using Word to design our web page, which is a lot easier than HTML. Now, Word has an interesting feature. We'll not only say save, we'll not only save the file, but we'll do save as. So save as gives you an opportunity to not only save the file under a different name, but you can also save it under a different type. See how this says file name down here, and this says file type. So you might think the only type there is for a Word document to be saved, that is Word, but we could save it as a PDF, but we can also save it as a web page. So this is something Microsoft added, and now we can hit save, and this is what it would look like as a web page. But just to go back to our folder, here's what has now happened. So it's a little, it's not too complicated, but if you think about it, this is kind of a great idea. If you wanted to create a one-page web page and didn't want to memorize HTML, but you're real comfortable with Word, what you could do is you can create what you want the web page to be in Word, and then hit save as HTML. Now, you know, we already seen an example where you have an HTML page which refers to a picture that's maybe somewhere else. So it might make sense that we have this HTML page and then maybe a folder with all the stuff it refers to. So Microsoft does that, Microsoft Word does this on purpose, and this way it packages everything together here. So if you decided, I want to get rid of this page, you can get rid of this page plus all the junk that's in here. Now, if this stuff wasn't in a separate folder, it would be scattered all over the place, and it would be tough to clean it up. So it's kind of nice that they put it in a separate folder. But we can now go to we can go out to the internet and view this page that we've just created. And so what we can do is we can go, let me bring up a fresh web browser. We'll do Zora. And then I created a new folder called Word. So I'm directing my web browser to go to the Word folder, and then in there, I would have to specifically say what file name, but since I happen to call it index, I don't have to give its name. And I kind of thought something like this would happen. It's very strange. But I knew that print, the type of print, that red, you know, the white letters with the red trim around it, that's not part of normal HTML. So I kind of thought it wouldn't be able to handle it. It looks like, so it says, welcome to my page, and it looks like only the white part came out. The red trim is gone.
Yep.
But, which kind of makes sense, because there is really no such thing. So what I'm saying is, a lot of things that are available in Word, there is no corresponding HTML equivalent. So it just kind of does a best guess. But the picture part comes out. And then if you wanted to put hours of operation, you could just type that in as normal Word text, and it would save it.
So if you hit view source, it would look just like how you did your.
Oh no, that's a good thing. This is going to look like totally berserk. This is the source generated by Microsoft Word. It's going to look like a ton of crap. View source. This is what Microsoft Word generated for you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big file, and it makes references to that other folder.
Gotcha.
But the thing is this, since we don't really care too much about space, 30 years ago, computer space meant a lot, and if a file got really big, that mattered. It doesn't matter anymore. So the thing is this, if you were going to use Word to design your tool, to design your web page, And let's say you made some changes to it and you liked it, and then you decided a little bit later on, I want to update it. How would you update it? Would you go into the HTML and start making changes?
I'd go back to Word.
Right.
A new webpage, like, send
Or
it.
just take the Word file that was used to generate this, make the updated Word, and then resave it as HTML, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is, Word is, obviously we could, if a friend of yours asked you, could you make a web page for me? You know, let's say they opened up a hamburger stand, and it was just the name of the place, what hours they're open, and the menu. Nobody would ever ask questions, nobody's gonna type in their name and log in or anything like that. It's just purely informational. You could do it within 2 minutes using Word. Just make them, tell them, you know, type in all the data they want, put the pictures up, the logos, the heading, do save as HTML, and they're done. And then you call a company like GoDaddy or whatever and buy some place on the internet, copy the file over, and you're done. So Word would be kind of a good tool for like a one-page informational page. What if you wanted to have a website where you're selling products, and let's say it was sporting good products, and you wanted to break it up into one page for like baseball, one page for football, one page for lacrosse, and so on. And it's not just one page. Word ends up not being a good idea for this. You'd want to use a better tool, and what the tool we'll talk about next is a tool called Dreamweaver, which is meant for, just like Word, you're using a design panel like Word to include your pictures, change the colors and all that. When you're done, you're going to say save as HTML, but it's really meant a lot more sophisticated websites.